guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Eshi and I do a ton of personal finance, DIY, and more recently, travel videos. Today, I'm going to take you through how to plan your trip to Puerto Rico. Back at the end of June, me and a group of my friends went to Puerto Rico for a full week. Now, you may not know this about me, but when it comes to trip planning, I am neurotic. I did a ton of research for this trip. I made our group an itinerary, I booked all of the stays, all of the experiences, and with all of that knowledge, I'm hoping I can show you the top 10 things to do while you're in Puerto Rico. And because I'm your best friend and want you to do the least amount of work possible, down in the description box below, I am linking you my full research document with all of the activities that I looked up, the costs, their websites, links to purchase tickets, all of that good stuff is down below, so definitely check it out. I am also linking my full week's itinerary down below so you can see what I planned for my group of 10 friends in Puerto Rico. I did a ton of work for this trip, so if you can go ahead and give me a like down below, that would help me out a lot. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe because I will have more travel content coming up. So let's jump right in with a few planning tips for you as you put your trip together. My number one planning trip right off the bat is to make sure that you and anyone you're going with is fully vaccinated. Our entire group of 10 friends was fully vaccinated, and let me tell you, it made things a lot easier. There's actually a travel declaration form that you have to fill out online and present at the airport when you get to Puerto Rico, and I'll leave the link for that down below. As a part of that travel declaration form, you have to upload your vaccination card or show your test results for your COVID test. So make sure you and your friends have that travel declaration form filled out, and it'll give you back a QR code that you can save in your phone and just show at the airport. The second thing to keep in mind as you're planning your trip is transportation. If you're only planning on staying in some of the more populated urban areas like San Juan, you will have no problem getting around by just using Ubers and Lyfts and taxis. If, however, you are planning to go around the island to more rural areas like we did, you will definitely want to get a rental. What we actually ended up doing for the first half of our trip is renting a car while we were on the west side of the island. We were staying in a town called Rincon, but we were actually traveling up and down the west coast of Puerto Rico to do a bunch of adventures, so it ended up being way easier for us to rent 2 cars for our group of 8 people. By the way, if you have not seen my Puerto Rico vlogs, you should definitely check them out. They are a lot of fun. We did so many activities, and I will leave a link to them right here. Part 1 of my vlog will show you exactly what I'm talking about when I say we did a bunch of adventures on the west side of the island. So I ended up spending a total of $250 for the car rental and for gas for the total of 5 days. And we drove that car around all over the place, so I think it was fully worth it. Another planning thing to really think about is whether you're going to be staying at a hotel or an Airbnb. There's usually plenty of options for either the Airbnbs or the hotels, no matter where you stay on the island, and they can go from very cheap to very luxurious. We ended up getting an Airbnb while we were on the west side of the island, and then when we made our way over to San Juan for the second half of the trip, we stayed at a nicer hotel. To give you an approximation, I spent $110 on the Airbnb for 3 nights while we were on the west side of the island. And when we went over to San Juan for the second half of the trip, we stayed at a really nice hotel, and me and my boyfriend kind of upgraded a little bit, decided to get our own room, and that was $510 for 4 nights. In the grand scheme of things, those prices were well worth it for us, but you can definitely go cheaper or more expensive depending on what you're looking for. And the last quick planning tip I have for you has to do with planning your activities. The worst thing you can do is show up to paradise and spend half your time arguing about what you're gonna do and when you're gonna do it. So all I'm saying is just do your research ahead of time, use this video, use all my guides down below to figure everything out, make a plan and stick to it, but also be flexible, and you will have the best time, I promise. And now for my list of top 10 things to do while you are in Puerto Rico. Starting with number 1, something that a lot of people talk about, and for good cause, because you definitely need to go to Old San Juan. Old San Juan is actually the old territory that sits on an island within the capital city of San Juan. What I highly recommend doing is spending at least a full day exploring the entire island. The buildings in Old San Juan is that old Spanish colonial architecture, and everything is super bright and beautiful. Every building is painted these beautiful pastel or bright colors, and it just makes the entire island truly magical. There are definitely a couple places that you can make some stops while making your way around the island. There are a couple museums that you can stop by. It's usually about $10 if you want to go inside the museum to check out the exhibits, or there's usually a couple free garden exhibits on the outside. There are also 2 old forts that you can explore, one on either side of the island, and usually it's about $7 to $10 also to go in and take a guided tour. Otherwise, you can do what we did. We went to Castillo San Felipe del Morro, and we just took our time and wandered around the grounds. It was beautiful. There were people flying kites, there were people just hanging out, having picnics. We sat on top of some of the old edges of the fort and just watched the sunset, and that in itself was well worth the trip. There's also this very iconic Instagrammable street that has a bunch of umbrellas over the top. It is actually the street that leads up to the governor's mansion, so if you have a second, definitely stop by there, grab a few selfies. It's beautiful. There's also this old neighborhood called La Perla that sits right between the 2 forts, and it is really beautiful. This is also where some of those more iconic pictures of Old San Juan are taken. It's an older neighborhood with a bad rap for being dangerous, but it's on the rise, so if you are with a group of people and it's during the daytime, you can definitely explore the outskirts with no problem. It was actually also made famous by the Despacito music video, so that's where that was taken. And also, if you remember in the music video, there is a bar seed that's actually also in Old San Juan. It's called La Factoria, and it is a world famous bar. We unfortunately were not able to get in because by the time we showed up, it was a Saturday night and there was a line out the door. So if you want to visit, make sure you show up earlier or maybe during the weekdays. All that is to say that you can definitely plan a couple spots to stop by in Old San Juan. But honestly, you can kind of let the magic of the city take over and you can just wander for the entire day and be perfectly content. Number 2 of the top 10 things to do in Puerto Rico is to visit El Yunque Rainforest. El Yunque is the only rainforest in all of the US system, so it is definitely worth a visit when you are in Puerto Rico. It is about a 40-minute drive east of San Juan, so there's a couple different ways that you can do that. You can do it by yourself by renting a car, going to El Yunque, getting a timed ticket for when you can actually enter the park, and going and exploring the hikes and the trails by yourself. Or you can do what we ended up doing, which is booking a guided tour that actually picks you up from whatever hotel you're in San Juan, driving you over there, providing the tour, getting you to a pit stop for a lot of amazing, delicious food, and then driving you all the way back to your hotel. If your group is the type that's up for an adventure, I highly recommend the tour that we took. I will leave the link down below, but we ended up jumping off waterfalls, scaling rocks, going off of water slides, swimming through rivers. I mean, it was everything and more, and so worth the price. It ended up being $100 per person, and then we decided to tip an additional $25 per person because it was that good. It is a full 8-hour day where they talk to you about the history of the rainforest, all of the different plants that you see, the different ecosystems that exist within the rainforest, and then of course you get to scale rocks, go hiking, be super muddy, but then jump off waterfalls. I mean, it was crazy ridiculous and an experience of a lifetime. So if you are able to do that, link down below, absolutely do that tour. And don't forget to bring shoes that you are totally okay with getting completely muddy, because there was no way around that. While we were on the way back to San Juan after our entire full hike and adventure, we made a pit stop just right off the side of the road at this big food market, and it ended up being one of the best meals of our entire week. It was all freshly made food that was clearly just made by a family that runs that stall, and it was just freaking fantastic. Number 3 is a visit to Culebra Island. Culebra Island is a smaller island that is off of the east coast of Puerto Rico and is home to some of the top beaches in all of the world. There are turtles, there's coral reefs that you can explore, there is this picturesque graffitied tank that's on this one beach that everyone takes pictures on, of course, and it's mostly uninhabited, so it's just all an adventure on its own. So like I mentioned before, you can definitely just drive maybe a car rental all the way over from San Juan to the east coast, You can park your car there and you can take a ferry over to Culebra Island, and I think it's only about an hour ferry ride, and the cost is very cheap. It's like at most $5 for a ferry ride. You can get over to Culebra Island and then you can walk around for sure, or you can actually rent a golf cart, which sounds like a bunch of fun in my opinion. That would run you about $70 per golf cart for the full day. You can also rent Jeeps and other cars like that, which obviously would be more expensive. We actually booked a tour that was going to take us all the way from San Juan, drive us over to the East Coast, and then we were going to do a sailing tour that would get to Culebra. We would do snorkeling, do a bunch of activities, and then come back. But unfortunately, because of the rainy, thunderstormy conditions, that ended up getting canceled. So I do have to preface this point by saying I didn't actually go to Culebra Island. With tip, that would have been about $220 to $230 for a full 8-hour tour with transportation from and back to San Juan. Again, ours got canceled because of weather, so we got fully refunded that amount, but I'm sure it would have been a blast, and I am so annoyed that we missed it. Number 4 on my top 10 things to do is visit Placita de Santurce. So Placita de Santurce is this area very close to San Juan that is just a bunch of blocks of bars, restaurants, and clubs. We ended up going there 2 of the nights that we were in San Juan, and again, if you have not seen my vlogs, you will not see the crazy dancing that happened. So definitely click the link right here. I mean, it's just an area with a lot of energy. It's definitely the place to go out if you're young. All of the bars and clubs and restaurants are all within walking distance of each other. It was also walking distance from the hotel, so that ended up being super handy at the end of the night. If you're looking for a great night out of partying, I highly recommend this area. Both nights that we went there, we would actually end up putting our names in at the restaurants, and there was always a wait. So we would go to the bars and to the clubs and just party it up while we were waiting. Then we would go to the restaurants at the very end of the night, have an amazing meal, and walk home to our hotel perfectly happy. Number 5 is to go to one of the 3 bio bays in Puerto Rico. There are a total of 5 bioluminescent bays across the world, and 3 of them happen to be in Puerto Rico. What happens is that there are these microorganisms that thrive in certain areas, and at night, if there's no light around, if you move your hands or move something under the water, these microorganisms will actually light up, and it looks like little lightning bugs under the water. This is definitely a bucket list type of item to visit a bio bay and see that magical experience for yourself. We actually ended up going to the bio bay that's located in the southwestern side of the island. Again, all the links are down below, but we went through Paradise Scuba and snorkeling. The total tour was around 6 hours. They actually took us out snorkeling first, then they brought us back for food, then we visited another island that was off of the coast of Puerto Rico, and then we went and saw the bio bay. So it was an overall huge adventure. It ran us to about $98 with tip, but again, one of those things that you just have to see to believe how magical it was. You could literally move your hands around under the water and everything around you would be sparkling and kind of felt like you had magical powers. It was just phenomenal, and you should see it for yourself. Number 6 is Gozalandia Falls. Again, this is on the west side of the island in an area called San Sebastian. We actually drove to Gozalandia Falls on our way from the west side of the island to San Juan. It was just one of our pit stops, and it worked out perfectly. It is this beautiful waterfall that you can jump off of if you are brave, or just purely enjoy and watch other people jumping off. The drive to Gozalandia Falls is an adventure in itself, because let me tell you, the roads are the most windy, uphill, crazy turn roads you will ever see, but it was well worth it and actually a lot of fun to drive. When you actually make it there, hopefully in one piece, the parking ends up being about $10, which is not bad because you don't have to pay for anything else. There's like restrooms at the top, and then you walk down a bunch of flights to get to the actual waterfall. And it's actually pretty crazy when you get to see the water itself. It's like very green blue. There are fish that swim right up next to you, and they are pretty big, so that's kind of cool. You definitely have to bring your water shoes because it is mossy and slippery, so if you're trying to sit on the rocks that are inside the water or just swim around, it really helps you get some grip if you have water shoes. And then of course, you see the gigantic waterfall. There are around 4 spots that you can jump off of. There are 3 that are closer to the bottom, not so difficult. And then there's a jump at the very top, where you actually have to climb some rope and go behind the waterfall itself to get to that very top point, and then you're gonna jump about 30 feet. Am I an adrenaline junkie? Obviously. I will say, if you are not the strongest of swimmers, do not do this big jump at the very top, but you can do some of the smaller jumps at the bottom, or you can just enjoy swimming around the water, sitting at the edge, watching everybody else jump. I mean, it's awesome to see everyone else do that. Number 7 is Survival Beach Hike. This is in Aguadilla on the west side of the island. It's actually very close to the Aguadilla airport. That's actually where we landed when we got to Puerto Rico. You're gonna wanna put Surfers Beach in your GPS when you're getting to this location, because it is more of a hidden hike than most. When you park in that parking lot for Surfers Beach, you have to go all the way to the north of the parking lot, and you will see this one tiny sign that says Survival Beach Hike, and that is where you get started. I wish I would have timed how long it took for us to go all the way up to the hike and all the way back down, but let me tell you, we were fully sweating by the time we were done. At first you start in the woods and in the brush, and you don't really know exactly where you're going, but then all of a sudden it'll open up to some of the most magnificent views of the ocean you will ever find. It'll take you to the ocean shore, it'll take you back up, and before you know it, you're climbing up the mountains and you get to that very peak spot where you can see the entire view of the ocean. It is magnificent. When you get to that very tippy top point of the mountain hike, you can go all the way back down right there to Survival Beach if you want to take a dive in, if you want to surf. We actually ended up just going straight back. The hike was beautiful enough for us, but this hike honestly led to some of the most astounding views I have ever seen, and the best part about it was completely free, and who doesn't love a free adventure? You will see some of the clips from our hike in my part 1 vlog, so definitely check that out. It is well worth your time. Number 8 is Crash Boat Beach. This is actually very close to the Survival Beach hike that I just mentioned, so what we did was we actually did the hike first, and then we made our way down to Crash Boat Beach. So this is definitely a popular beach, so if you're gonna get there around peak hours, it might be a tiny bit hard to find parking. This beach is super popular because, first of all, the waters are amazing. There are a bunch of fishies that will swim around you as you're by the shore, but also there is this really, really long pier that you can walk all the way to the end and then jump off of, and that jump is not very short. It is a good jump. So again, if you're an adrenaline junkie like me, absolutely go here. And it's called Crash Boat Beach because at the very end of the pier, if you bring your snorkeling gear with you, you can actually see the remains of a boat at the very bottom. If the water conditions aren't really, really clear, you may not see all of it, but if you can dive down a little bit further, you will see those remains. There's also a ton of fish that you will swim with if you're jumping off that pier. It's just a very cool experience. There's actually a bunch of vendors on the shore, so you can make a whole day of it. The one warning I will give is that there's actually a lot of bees that circle where some of the trash cans are. So if you have trash, just make sure to get rid of it ASAP so that the bees aren't attracted to your little area instead. We parked a little further away from the beach than the main parking spot, so again, we didn't even end up paying anything for this adventure, so we love a free adventure. Number 9 of my top 10 things to do in Puerto Rico is to visit all of the Rincon beaches. Now obviously, if you are anywhere around the island, all of the beaches are fantastic, but Rincon is on the west side of the island, which is a tiny bit more rural than places like San Juan. So some of the beaches are a little bit more untouched, which means that your snorkeling experiences are going to be fantastic. We actually spent the majority of the first day that we had in Puerto Rico just chilling by the beach, hanging out, snorkeling, just loving the sun. It was fantastic. And the great part about Rincon is there's a bunch of different beaches to choose from. If you're going to mostly swim, there's a great beach for that. If you're going to snorkel more, there is a great beach for that. It's like a marine preserve, so you'll see more animals hopefully and some coral. If you're going to surf, there is a great beach for that, or just watch the cool surfers surf. So really, you just get to pick what kind of beach you're looking for and you'll find it in Rincon. We were super lucky and our Airbnb was literally across the way from a beach, but I did notice that the parking lot there was completely free. So I have a feeling all parking for these beaches are either going to be free or very inexpensive. And last but not least, number 10 on my top 10 things to do in Puerto Rico is to visit La Planta Falls. La Planta Falls is actually a set of 2 waterfalls, again on the west side of the island and in definitely a more rural area. This was one of the pit stops that we took on our way from Rincon all the way over to the east side of the island in San Juan. When I say rural, this is probably the most rural area that we visited in Puerto Rico. You will be going through some very, very bad roads, some very windy areas. You'll be going through some very, very small towns. And I will say that when we went, we weren't able to experience both falls, and I will explain. So when you get to La Planta Falls, there is a little parking area, and you can walk maybe like 2 minutes down the road and you'll see the first set of falls. It's absolutely beautiful, but it's not as big as Gozalandia Falls, for example. Now, if you want to make it to the second set of falls, here's where it gets a little tricky. You actually have to wade up the river until you get to a spot that you get off of the river, and then you take a hike through the woods, and then you get to the second set of falls. The second set of falls is actually a man-made waterfall, but it is humongous, and there are some beautiful spots for some pictures. It honestly looks so stunning, but we did not get to go to those second set of falls because by the time that we went, it was kind of later in the day, and there was just a shady group of people in the parking lot. So our entire group made the decision just to see that first set of waterfalls and then head out as soon as possible. So if you are trying to go here, I would definitely recommend going in a group. Do not go by yourself. Just for safety reasons, make sure you are in a group of people, and I would even suggest going in shifts. So have half the group go see the first set of waterfalls, and then if you want to go wade through, make it to the second set of waterfalls, then come back and then switch so that at all times there are a couple people with your cars, with your belongings, all of that good stuff. And again, go with your gut, safety first no matter what. So if you're not feeling it like we weren't, head out. I left this activity in here because if I ever go back to Puerto Rico and if I'm with a group of people and we feel completely safe, I absolutely want to go see this magnificent falls. It looks like a freaking dream, as were all of the other activities that we did in Puerto Rico. So I am just hoping and praying for the day that I get to go back there. So that was it, you guys. Don't forget to check out all of the links to all of the research that I so painstakingly did for you. All of that is down below. Don't forget to leave a comment if you have a question. I religiously answer all of my comments, so leave it down below. If my video helped you plan for your trip to Puerto Rico, do not forget to hit that like button. And if you want to see more travel content from me, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching today, you guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you on my next adventure.